Our guest today is Megan Kamstra, and I had the pleasure of meeting her. Some of you guys know that one of my really good friends, Barb, she and I do fish fry on Friday nights. And I had the pleasure of sitting with Megan and her husband at Barb's wedding reception recently. Come to find out that Megan is going to be a first time mom. So I started asking so many questions, and poor Megan probably just thought, who is this person sitting next to me asking me tons and tons of questions? And I finally just said, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? And Megan said, sure. So, for all of our listeners, please welcome Megan Kamstra. She is a first time mom, and I am so excited to have her on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
And I hope you like my picture that I picked from your Facebook.
Very nice.
It's your rocking horse.
Yeah, my dad made that for me when I was a kid.
So, when I first started asking you questions, did you think I was just off my rocker?
No, I enjoy listening to podcasts, so I was really interested to hear about yours and just kind of find out a little bit about your background and learn some of the guests that you've had previously. And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting.
That's awesome. We're really happy to have you on. Do you want me to just dive right in and start asking questions?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
So I was very intrigued with you being a first time mom. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've never been pregnant, never had children. So I have never gone through the experience. And that was most likely where all of my excitement came from to ask you so many questions. Let's start with wherever you want to start with telling your story.
Sure. So I'm 35. So according to my doctors, I was an elderly pregnancy, which was a little bit painful to see in your medical record. Um, yeah, my husband and I have been married for 2 years and knew early on that we wanted kids. So it was very exciting. It was actually the week of Thanksgiving, so going on a year coming up that we found out we were pregnant. So it was really exciting.
How did you break the news to friends and family? Because that seems to be an interesting topic. At least on Facebook, you're never quite sure. Some people are really subtle, other people are right out there. How did you and your husband decide to tell your friends and family?
Yeah, that was kind of tough to figure out. We did want to wait a while before we told anyone. So actually for Christmas is when we told our parents. We got them, the grandparents, like a grandparent related gift. And so for my mom and for Barb, it's their first time being grandmas. So it was really exciting for both of them and just so fun to watch them open those gifts and sort of realize. But I think Barb knew before because when I got to her house, she offered me wine and I had to say no. And so I think she knew. But yeah, it was really exciting. And then we held off telling, extended family and friends just for a little while, till we were kind of past that first trimester. And then shared, with our close friends, and that was really exciting too. We didn't do any big reveal or anything though for everybody else, just for the grandparents.
I love the grandparents, and let me tell you, Barb was wildly excited.
I know, I
Yeah.
know. It was great.
Yeah, it was really good. And I feel as if lots of people wait until after the first trimester.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like that first trimester is sort of, just your time to kind of figure things out and, just as a family kind of navigate everything that's going on because it's exciting and it's scary, and it just is a really personal time. So just wanting to spend that just in your own little bubble, I think is kind of nice.
Couple things before we keep going down your journey. A geriatric pregnancy is something that I've been hearing a lot lately. It's one of those
Yeah.
things you don't hear, and then all of a sudden you hear it all the time. So I did, you and I talked about it. I had a couple other friends. I made a comment about, hey, have you ever heard of a geriatric pregnancy? Because I truly had never heard of it, or I didn't think I had heard of it. And sure enough, a couple people said, oh, by the way, I was a geriatric pregnancy. I said, how on earth can that be?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked up anybody over the age of 35 is
Yep.
considered having a geriatric pregnancy. And another research study that I looked up was that according to the US Census Bureau, the new mom median age is 30 and it's rising and it's continued to rise. And then I also looked up who is the oldest mom to have a natural birth, and she was 57, and I'll have those in the show
Wow.
notes. Others have been older, 66, I believe 66 and 65, but those were in vitro. So for a natural birth, 57. So
Wow.
the human body is amazing.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Doing more research and looking into this, there are checklists, there are probably millions of web pages. There are what every mom needs to know, what every mom needs to have, every mom should have, what every mom needs to have. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
I mean, you
It's
can go,
overwhelming.
it is, you can go down a rabbit hole. So being a first time
Mhm.
mom, take us through maybe the second and into the third trimester with how did you grapple with everything that's out there?
One of the helpful tools I think that we had, our hospital where we planned to deliver had a lot of virtual, because of COVID, classes that we took advantage of, many of which were free. Some of them had a fee for it, but I think that was really helpful in kind of preparing us at least for what labor and delivery looks like. Um, and just kind of setting expectations, because as first time parents you really don't know what you're getting into. So I found that really helpful. And I think another hint that I would share that my doctor shared with me was to not Google things, because and that's a problem that I have. I Google everything. So especially in the medical field, Googling is kind of a dangerous rabbit hole that you can get into. And so I mean, I utilized my doctors. We have like an app that you can send your doctor a message if you have a question. And so I just kind of relied on their expertise. Um, did read some books, but really just tried to gather as much information as we could. And I think there's only so much you can do to prepare.
Mhm.
um, I think a lot of it is just learning as you go as well.
Getting advice from others who had had babies is probably one of the most common ways to obtain information
Yeah.
if you're supposed to a little bit stay away from Google.
Yes, yeah. And I was actually very fortunate to have two coworkers who had babies just a few months before I did. So, if I had questions like, "Hey, did this happen for you?" or, "What do you do about this?" It was nice to be able to bounce those questions off of people who had recently experienced it.
So, the one question that I thought of immediately was so many of my friends growing up had names of babies picked out. And a friend of mine who we grew up together, we used to play the game of life. And so we would, we'd get our husband and then we'd name our husband. And then as we kept playing the game of life, we really just wanted to add the kids into the car that,
Yep.
goes through the whole game board. And we always were so excited to pick out baby names. And so it didn't matter if it was a girl or a boy, we had all these top picks, which then in high school, when you're sitting around out in the grass at recess, talking about who you're going to marry, because, we all know who we're going to marry in high school, and
Yep.
then the names of our kids. And then we go to college and then we talk to our girlfriends and then we really get out into the real dating scene. Did you have a name picked out through any of those stages?
I think I definitely did the same thing when playing Life. I wanted to fill up my car with all the kids. I
It's like the
don't,
best part for a girl.
yeah, yeah. I don't think I really wanted to name for a while daughter Kimberly after the Pink Power Ranger. But other than that, I don't think I ever had like a really solid, like, I really want to name my kid this. And yeah, didn't really have like any ideas. Kind of had a couple family names that I sort of liked, maybe for a middle name, but nothing too concrete. My husband and I downloaded this app on our phones that I maybe it was helpful. I don't really think it was. It's kind of like Tinder, but for baby names. So you and your partner both have it on your phone and you're swiping left or right, like, yes, I like this name. No, I don't like that name. And then it tells you when you match. And it was some either really common names or really out there names. And we kind of knew that we wanted something not too crazy, pretty common, but also unique. And I felt like picking a name was really the most stressful part of being pregnant. I just felt like it was so important and also like just so that there were just too many choices. Like, where do you even start? And so we kind of had a short list running of names, first names, once we found out the gender, and ended up just playing around with them, thinking about, about my day at work. I would kind of talk to my daughter in my head and sort of use names and see if it had a good feeling and if it felt like was a good fit. And so one day I got home from work and I told my husband, like, I think I'm pretty set on a name that I want. And he's like, I think I am too. And so I said, let's write them down and then show each other. And we wrote down the same first name. So it just worked out and it felt like it really fit. And we were a little nervous because people were telling us, you might want to have a backup name because if she's born and you're like, oh, she doesn't look like this name at all, you kind of want a backup. But I think it was perfect. So it really worked out.
You had mentioned that the gender, once you knew the gender, then you were thinking about the name. How did the gender reveal for you and your husband go? Did you know right away that you wanted to know prior to the baby being born, or were you thinking that you might wait until the baby was born? That also seems to be a hot topic.
Yeah, we were pretty in agreement that we wanted to find out. We're both, I think, kind of planners, and so wanted to know, and the idea of not knowing, I think, made me too anxious. Like, I really just wanted to know, and my husband wanted to know too. So we decided to find out.
Makes it easier when you're both on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. And I know everybody says it's the best surprise you can get if you wait, and I just couldn't do it.
Take us through when you thought that you were close to giving birth, and how did you prepare for that?
It it actually went pretty fast. So I came home from work a little early on a Thursday, and worked like maybe half a day from home. Just wasn't feeling great. I was less than a week away from my due date, so was sort of feeling like maybe something was starting to happen. But came home, finished off the day working from home, and just felt like something's going on. And I remember talking to my mom and just asking her, like, what does a contraction feel like? I don't really know what I'm waiting for. And you can Google it, you can look it up online and read what people say it feels like, but you still don't really know until you feel it, and then um but yeah, just that whole evening Thursday night felt like I was starting to have some contractions, and finally ended up calling the hospital, and they sort of screen you over the phone. The nurse asks like what's going on, how close together your contractions are, and they gave us the green light to come on in to the hospital. So I think we left our house around 2 a.m. Friday, and my daughter was born at 4 p.m. on Friday. So it was a um, pretty quick labor. I've heard people with stories of, pretty lengthy labor. I was 4 centimeters dilated for a while and was not progressing. So ended up having to have some Pitocin to try and get things moving along. And I did have an epidural, which I didn't have, a really concrete birth plan. I know a lot of women do have a pretty strong idea or opinion of what they want their labor to look like. And I sort of wanted to just play it by ear. And, I remember telling my mom, like, maybe I can do it without drugs. And she's like, she just kind of laughed at me because she had me with no medication. And she's like, no, you can't. um,
She knows you all too well.
she knows me well. So yeah, I it was probably mid-morning when I told the nurse, like, I think I'm ready for the epidural. So that had been something I was actually really nervous about. Just again, don't Google medical things because you will read stories that might frighten you. So I was kind of nervous, but it went really smoothly, and ended up only pushing for maybe like half an hour. Um, Things were going really well. And then the doctor said, your daughter's heart rate is dropping and we need to get her out. So they used, and I don't know what the technical term is for it, but they called it basically a vacuum, to kind of get her out quickly. Just because I was too far along for a C-section. So they needed to give her a little boost to get her out. And delivered her. They put her on my chest and no cry. So that, was a very scary, it was the best moment because I saw her for the first time, but then quickly turned into the scariest moment because you could tell there was a change of, tone in the room from the nurses and the doctor because she wasn't crying. So they immediately took her away from me and kind of over to the side. They're inspecting her and we're all waiting. She's not crying. So they had to take her away. And I just remember sobbing because I didn't know what was going on and they didn't know what was going on. She was breathing, but she was struggling. So we found out that she had, they call it a pneumothorax. So they think that, the force of being born, the change in pressure, sort of did something to her lung. And so it wasn't able to inflate properly. So they were able to correct it, luckily, very quickly. And she spent a few days in the NICU, but made a complete recovery. So we were really, really thankful for the hospital staff, and the NICU nurses are amazing. And we learned a lot from them. They took great care of her. But it went from being like, oh, this is going really well, like this is an easy labor, to being like a really scary, not what we had planned
Did I hear you
moment.
correctly that you went to work on a Thursday and then you had her on Friday at 4 p.m.?
Yeah.
No sleep. I didn't hear any sleeping in
Nope.
there.
There was
Okay.
no sleeping. I think after I had the epidural, I think, I was able to get maybe an hour, like a little nap in there. But yeah, yeah, we were starting off on little sleep.
I see that. Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. When did you get to hear your daughter's first cry then?
It wasn't until probably, so she was born at 4 and they took her away and she was in the NICU and we didn't get to meet her really till probably like 8 p.m.
Okay.
So it was a hard wait, and like a really emotional experience getting to hold her for the first time in the NICU. And just, and I remind myself now whenever she's crying, like I wanted that so badly and we were praying like, please cry, please cry. And so now I just try and remind myself like this is what we wanted.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a happy sound now for me.
Planning. Let's talk about that. In my research, I found lists upon lists upon lists. And in today's parent online webpage, they talk about feeding, they talk about having bibs, burp cloths, milk storage containers, pads, and then diapers. They have a whole list of things for diapering. And then they also have things for disposable diapers. Then they have clothing, and it, it's pretty standard, I would think. Laundry detergent for infants. I'm assuming there's body lotion for infants, shampoo for
Mhm.
infants, blankets, bath time. How did you go through all of that information when it was just so overwhelming? There's so much out there.
There's so much, and as non-parents, you don't even realize half of it that's out there. So one of the things that was helpful for us was we went to Bye Bye Baby to start our baby registry, and they gave us kind of a template for like, these are the things you're going to need, and broke it down into categories. So we kind of had a good, I think, basic kind of starting point based on that list that they gave us. And then once you kind of are looking at things on the internet, it kind of leads you down like, oh, maybe we need this. I also joined a Facebook group for moms that were due the same month that I was, and that was kind of a valuable um, tool as well, just because it was women sharing recommendations like, hey, did you guys buy this? Like, I think this will be really helpful. So just getting input from other moms was the biggest thing too. Like, what worked for you, what didn't work. There's a lot of things out there, I think, that are promoted as like, you need this for a baby, and then you talk to other moms and they say you don't really need that. So getting feedback from people that have been through it was really helpful.
Is there a favorite item that you thought, "Oh, I'm so glad I have this. I could never live without it"?
Yeah, we actually, as one of our gifts, received like cloth diapers, and we weren't set on like using them. And Barb actually suggested to me, like, you can use them as burp cloths, you can use them as like just a pad on a diaper changing station. And that's one of the things that we've used probably more than anything else. Not for its intended purpose, but it has so many uses. It's been really valuable because you
That's
do a
awesome.
lot of laundry.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's never ending. And that wasn't something I anticipated. That was kind of a surprise.
Is it just because you change the baby a lot? Tell us about the types of laundry items that you were constantly washing.
Yeah, we probably not quite every day are doing a load of laundry for her, but probably every few days. Just you sometimes go through a couple outfits a day. She's at a stage right now where she's drooling constantly, and so clothes are just getting wet, and burp cloths, every time you use them can get kind of soiled. Um, Diaper changing station pads can frequently get soiled, so we're having to wash those pretty frequently. She's a fan of peeing without a diaper on, so when you're trying to change her, she likes to surprise you, and so then there's something else you have to wash, so it's pretty constant.
Tell us about your new routine. I think that's something else that when I was doing research, that mothers talked about, that their routine was completely upended. We go through our
Yeah.
cycles and stages in life, but this is a brand new stage.
Yeah, and I think I'm getting the sense that being a parent is just constantly readjusting your routine. um when we brought her home from the hospital, it is definitely it I think it helps because initially you have some structure. So, you're feeding it was every 3 hours for us. So at least you had that, like, okay, I know what we're doing at what time. And early on, she was mostly sleeping. So, it wasn't too bad, just the every 3 hour feedings. But as she starts to get a little older, and is awake more, kind of coming up with a schedule, we realized that it's hard to get a schedule for babies to nap. Like there's really, nothing you can do. We would try and wake her up sometimes, but she's going to nap when she wants to nap, in those early days. So we came up, I feel like we had a good routine. For the first 6 weeks, my husband was home, which was great. And then he went back to work. And so then it's okay, now we're on to a new routine because I was still home for another 6 weeks, but I was solo with her during the day. So again, kind of you got comfortable in one routine and now something changed and you have to figure things out again. Um, got comfortable with that routine and then I went back to work after 12 weeks. So again, just kind of trying to navigate, figuring out it's constant change, but I think, you do what you can and you make it work.
Do you feel like you have a good routine now?
Yeah, I've been back at work. I think this is my third week back, and I feel like we do have a pretty good routine. My husband and I are a good team, I think, and so we really work well together and do whatever our daughter needs done. And she's going to daycare, so we're in the morning making bottles and getting her ready and getting ourselves ready, and taking her to and from where she needs to go. So it we sort of planned it out a little bit ahead of time just because I knew that was going to be hugely helpful for me just to kind of know what mornings were going to look like. And so talking through that ahead of time for me was really beneficial, I think. Like what is our routine going to look like? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? That helped a lot.
Yeah, it sounds as if you and your husband have a really good communication path and that the planning has really helped with the entire process.
Yeah, I think when you have kids, it definitely makes communication like all that more important in a relationship. And so figuring out, how to communicate if you need help with something or if something's not working out, I think, addressing those things becomes even more important, for your relationship and for your child. So it's kind of adding a new dynamic and a new stage of your relationship. And it's, we're still learning and we're still figuring things out, but we're in it together. And I think it's going as well as it can.
Something else that I was reading on is self-care. And a lot of moms don't do self-care or put themselves first before baby just because that's what our society has always taught us to do. I did find some self-care activities for anyone that needs a little bit of a break. And one of the things is asking for help. How have you asked for help from other people when you really need to take a break?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best parenting advice out there is asking for help when you need it. Um, and that's not something I've always been good at. So this has been kind of a opportunity for me to practice that. Uh, I think asking family and friends to step in for a little support if you need, like, especially early on, if we needed to take a nap. Um, because you're not sleeping a whole lot. So that was really nice. Even just, my mom would come over so I could like clean the house, or if I needed to run an errand, somebody just offering to help a little bit was really nice. Or family members offered to watch our daughter so my husband and I could go out to dinner. So having a support system and taking advantage of, if people are offering to help. I think I myself have a tendency to say like, oh no, I'm fine. But if they're offering to help, like, take advantage of it because it's really going to benefit, your child in the long run if you're taking good care of yourself too.
Let me go through some other self-care activities. Go outdoors, give yourself a facial mask, practice scent therapy, take a nap, read a book, research a topic, try on your clothes. I'm guessing that's more about just going through and putting on clothes that you already had. It says try on old clothes. Color, a coloring book. And there are lots of adult coloring books out there. Browse your local library, try a new hairstyle or makeup, take a bubble bath, listen to music, have a favorite dessert, start a bullet journal, watch your favorite show, start a hobby. There are lots, but there's one in particular that you've done, and that is starting a blog. And I did find your blog post. I will have it so that people can link up to it in the show notes. Tell us about how that came about, because that was a great idea and I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always enjoyed writing, but you haven't done it in a really long time. Um, and becoming a parent gives you a lot to think about. And so just throughout my maternity leave, I was kind of thinking of ideas of like, hey, I'd like to write about this. So I have a little journal of blog ideas, but I know absolutely nothing about starting or running a blog. So this was based upon my internet research. And I'm started sort of writing this first post and spent a couple days on it. And it's basically a post of just things that I've found sort of amusing, being a new parent, things that maybe I wasn't prepared for. And I had a lot of fun writing it. And I hope that I can find time to continue it. I haven't written a second post yet, but I have, like I said, I have some ideas, and I hope I'll be able to keep it up. I enjoy writing and sharing my experiences. I hope people can relate to it.
I thought so. I really liked it. I think you should
Thank you.
continue. I think you should continue.
Thanks.
Yeah. What is something that you wish you would have known that you know now?
I think just the huge impact that having a baby has on your life. And that sounds silly to say because you know ahead of time like this is going to be a big change, but I think nothing really prepares you for it until it happens. And it's a great change. But I think if you just had some sense of like, wow, my life is going to be so different, and if you could almost like prepare for that a little bit, because I know for me there was sort of like a period of shock after, almost like just you don't even, I remember my husband and I joking, like we didn't even know if it was day or night a lot of times because you're just in this like really regimented routine. And so just, I think also knowing like that it's okay for you to not feel 100% okay either. Even though this is like the happiest time of your life, a lot of moms and dads, experience postpartum depression or anxiety. So I think just reassurance that that's absolutely normal and it's okay to get help. Um, I think that would have been helpful for me to know ahead of time.
I will be putting in the show notes links for anybody that does have postpartum depression or needs help. You can always go to your state and county resources for help with that. But I will also do some research in order for others, if they're feeling that way, to get the help that they need. Anything else that you want our listeners to know?
I being a parent is the best experience. There's nothing in my life that I can compare it to. And and people told me this before. People told me you're not going to believe the amount of love that you just right away have for this tiny human. And it's nothing I've ever experienced before. It's almost an emotion you didn't know like you were capable of feeling this magnitude of for someone. And it's just the best feeling.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on and giving us a glimpse of your life being a first time mom.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
And to all of our listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.